Welcome everyone. As a former member and ex-evangelist of one of the three movements within this group, I invite you to join me on this eye-opening journey as we critically examine the First Principles Bible Study series. This series, used by the International Churches of Christ, ICOC, the International Christian Churches, ICC, and the newly rebranded Restored Churches Worldwide, RCW, is presented as a foundational Bible study across all three groups. However, I'm here to reveal the truth. This series is a carefully crafted tool with one purpose: mind control. For years, I was deeply entrenched in this organization, rising to the role of evangelist and witnessing firsthand the insidious workings of this high-control group. Section 2. My journey into and out of the ICC sold-out discipling movement. My journey into the depths of the ICC sold-out discipling movement began with its rebranded iteration, the International Christian Churches. I devoted 7 years of my life to this organization, pouring my heart and soul into its teachings. For 3 to 4 of those years, I served in ministry, eventually rising to the role of evangelist and leading a church. I wasn't merely a passive observer. I was deeply entrenched in the inner workings of these movements. I sat in on staff meetings with the leadership of the movement, took part in budget discussions, and witnessed firsthand how the special missions funds were allocated. The leadership of ICC, one of the three movements, along with other high-ranking evangelists, personally trained me in conducting these studies, teaching the techniques and strategies used to convert and control members. However, my role as an evangelist gave me a behind-the-scenes perspective that most members never had access to. The dissonance between the church's outward facade of love and acceptance and the harsh realities I witnessed behind closed doors became impossible to ignore. In 2016, I reached my breaking point. I could no longer reconcile my conscience with the harmful practices I witnessed in the movement. The birth of the movement rooted in the First Principles doctrine. At the core of the movement's control mechanism lies the First Principles Bible Study series, a tool designed to centralize authority and enforce conformity. This series, a mandatory requirement for membership, claims to present the fundamental truths of Christianity. New recruits are required not only to complete the study twice within their first year, but also to memorize its content and teach it to others. Through this repetitive cycle of indoctrination, the teachings behind the First Principles Bible Study series are reinforced and embedded as unquestionable truths in the minds of the movement's members. At the inception of the movement, the founder, Kip McKean, presented himself as a modern-day apostle, a divinely appointed figure who claimed to receive direct revelation from God. This self-proclaimed authority enables the movement to dictate doctrine, interpret scripture to fit their narrative, and demand unquestioning obedience from their followers. The movement has created an environment where their teachings are considered law, and any deviation is met with swift and severe consequences, such as disfellowship. The movement claims that the First Principles series was designed to distinguish their teachings from all other Christian denominations. This us versus them mentality cultivates spiritual arrogance and isolation, effectively cutting members off from alternative viewpoints and sources of support. The First Principles Bible Study series served as the foundation for the International Churches of Christ, ICOC, the International Christian Churches, ICC, and the Restored Churches Worldwide, RCW, presenting skewed interpretations to cement control within these movements. It uses clear language and relatable anecdotes to appear reasonable, masking its manipulative nature. The studies evoke strong emotional responses, instilling fear and urgency to adopt the worldview of these movements. The First Principles curriculum unfolds like a carefully choreographed dance, with each step meticulously designed to guide the student down a predetermined path. The studies typically begin with seemingly harmless topics, such as God's love for humanity or the importance of living a moral life. This initial phase aims to build a relationship, foster trust, and create a sense of shared values between the student and the teacher, often a disciple or mentor within the doctrine of the First Principles teachings. As the studies progress, the focus deepens on more controversial doctrines, such as the exclusivity of the movement and the insistence on absolute obedience to their teachings. The student is inundated with carefully selected scriptures, often taken out of context, to reinforce these claims. Doubts and questions are swiftly addressed, not with genuine exploration, but with pre-packaged answers designed to reinforce the narrative of the movement. One of the most pivotal studies in the series is typically the one on discipleship. This study, often presented as the hallmark of true Christianity, lays the foundation for the movement's demands for unwavering loyalty and submission. Students are taught that being a disciple means surrendering their will to God, interpreted through the lens of the leadership of the movements. The First Principles series creates an illusion of choice, coercing members of the movement into conformity through fear-based tactics and manipulative language. Doubts are labeled as spiritual deficiencies, discouraging critical thinking and fostering a culture of public confession and control. The First Principles series uses repetition as a key tool for indoctrination, embedding its teachings into members' minds through rote memorization and constant reinforcement. New recruits are not only expected to complete the studies multiple times, but also to memorize key scriptures, definitions, and even entire passages from the study guides. This repetitive process solidifies the teachings of the movement as unassailable truths in the minds of its members. The constant exposure to the same phrases, arguments, and interpretations creates a sense of familiarity and certainty, gradually crowding out any alternative viewpoints or critical analysis. Moreover, the act of memorization itself can be a powerful tool for shaping beliefs. When individuals repeatedly recite specific phrases or ideas, even if they initially had reservations, those ideas can become deeply ingrained in their subconscious mind. This repetitive process can result in a phenomenon known as thought stopping, where individuals automatically reject any thoughts or information that contradicts the memorized doctrines. The movement frequently employs this technique to instill its most controversial teachings, such as exclusivity and the absolute authority of its leadership. By requiring members to repeatedly recite these doctrines, the movement bypasses critical thinking and embeds its ideology deep within the subconscious, making it incredibly difficult to question or dislodge. While claiming to faithfully represent biblical truth, the First Principles series often distorts Scripture, manipulating and twisting text to advance the control agenda of the movement and reinforce its authority. This manipulation of Scripture is often subtle, relying on selective quotations, out-of-context interpretations, and a disregard for the historical and cultural context of the biblical text. A common tactic used by the movement is proof texting, cherry-picking specific Bible verses to support predetermined conclusions while ignoring passages that provide context or offer a different perspective. This approach enables the movement to build a seemingly airtight case for its teachings, even when those teachings lack support from a holistic understanding of Scripture. Furthermore, the movement often imposes its own interpretations on biblical passages, dismissing alternative perspectives from reputable scholars or other Christian traditions. This creates an environment where the movement's interpretation of the Bible is regarded as the only valid one, effectively silencing dissenting voices and discouraging any critical examination of its teachings. This manipulation of Scripture is not only intellectually dishonest but also deeply spiritually harmful. It fosters a distorted view of God, portraying him as a demanding and controlling deity who requires absolute obedience and conformity. This distorted image of God is leveraged to instill fear and guilt in members, making them more susceptible to the movement's control tactics and less likely to question its teachings or consider alternative perspectives. The movement fosters an us versus them mentality, portraying itself as the only true church. This sense of exclusivity is reinforced through fear-based teachings that warn members of the dangers of associating with outsiders. This isolationist mentality creates a closed system, fostering dependence on the movement for members' social, emotional, and spiritual needs. The language of manipulation, common phrases and their hidden meanings. The movement uses phrases like God's plan and iron sharpens iron as tools of control, shaping members' thoughts and behaviors. These phrases justify control over personal choices, creating fear and reliance on the group. Repeated often, they manipulate perceptions and reinforce allegiance. Sowing seeds of fear, the consequences of questioning or leaving. The First Principles series instills fear, motivating obedience and conformity, fear of eternal damnation, social isolation, and spiritual condemnation. The three movements are presented as the sole true path to salvation. Stories of misfortune are used to reinforce the belief that staying within the three movements is essential for safety and salvation. The three movements control information and actively discourage outside perspectives. This creates an echo chamber, silencing dissent. Fear enforces compliance and silences any challenges to the three movements. Unveiling the facade. What constitutes a cult? The term cult often evokes images of fringe groups, bizarre rituals, and fanatical leaders. While these elements may be present in some cases, the reality of cults is far more nuanced and insidious. Cults, or as I prefer to call them, high control groups, operate on a spectrum with varying degrees of control and manipulation. However, they all share common characteristics that distinguish them from healthy organizations and religious groups. A cult, at its core, is a group or organization characterized by an excessive devotion to a person, idea, or thing. This devotion is often cultivated through a system of control and manipulation, designed to suppress critical thinking, limit individual autonomy, and enforce conformity to the group's ideology. One of the hallmarks of a cult is the presence of a charismatic leader who wields absolute authority. This leader's teachings and directives are often regarded as infallible, and any questioning or dissent is met with swift and severe consequences. The leader's charisma and perceived authority create an environment where followers are more likely to suspend their critical thinking skills and accept the group's teachings without question. Another defining characteristic of a cult is its control over information. Charismatic leadership lies at the heart of many high-control groups, serving as the gravitational force that draws individuals in and keeps them tethered to the group's ideology. These leaders often possess an undeniable magnetism, a captivating presence that inspires both adoration and obedience in their followers. They are master storytellers, weaving compelling narratives that resonate with individuals seeking purpose, belonging, or answers to life's complex questions. Their teachings often tap into deep-seated human needs for certainty, security, and a sense of transcendence, offering seemingly simple solutions to complex problems and promising a path to a brighter future. However, beneath the surface of this charisma often lies a hunger for power and control. These leaders surround themselves with yes-men, demand unquestioning loyalty, and brook no dissent or challenge to their authority. Their pronouncements are often regarded as divinely inspired or beyond reproach, effectively silencing any critical voices within the group. This dynamic of charismatic leadership and absolute authority creates an environment ripe for abuse. Followers, swept up in the leader's charisma and fearful of the consequences of disobedience, may surrender their critical thinking skills, personal autonomy, and even their moral compass to the dictates of the group. Information control serves as the bedrock of a cult's power, allowing its leaders to shape the perceptions, beliefs, and behaviors of its members. By controlling the flow of information, cults create a reality-distorting bubble, isolating their members from outside influences and reinforcing the group's ideology as the sole source of truth and guidance. This control manifests in various forms, from subtle manipulation to overt censorship. Cults often discourage their members from seeking outside perspectives, labeling critical information as dangerous, demonic, or contrary to God's will. They may restrict access to books, websites, or media that challenge the group's teachings, creating an information vacuum that can be filled only by the cult's carefully curated narrative. Thought control represents one of the most insidious aspects of a cult's control mechanism, extending its reach beyond outward behavior to shape the very thoughts, beliefs, and internal dialogue of its members. This manipulation is often subtle and gradual, operating beneath the level of conscious awareness to mold individuals into conformity with the group's ideology. Cults employ various techniques to achieve thought control, often disguised as spiritual practices or personal growth exercises. One common tactic is thought stopping, which involves training members to suppress any thoughts, doubts, or questions that challenge the group's teachings. He has created an environment where his word is law, and any deviation from his teachings brings swift and severe consequences, such as expulsion and being labeled as having fallen from faith within the congregation. Emotional manipulation serves as a potent weapon in a cult's arsenal, enabling its leaders to control and exploit the emotional vulnerabilities of its members. By creating an environment of fear, guilt, and shame, cults suppress dissent, enforce conformity, and maintain their grip on their followers' hearts and minds. One common tactic employed by cults is love bombing, showering new recruits with affection, attention, and a sense of belonging. This intense outpouring of love and acceptance can be intoxicating, particularly for individuals who are feeling lost, lonely, or searching for a sense of purpose. However, this love is often conditional, contingent upon the recruit's willingness to conform to the group's beliefs and behaviors. As members become more deeply enmeshed in the cult, the love bombing often gives way to fear-based control tactics. Cults may threaten members with social isolation, spiritual condemnation, or even physical harm if they question the group's teachings or attempt to leave. This fear can be paralyzing, preventing members from speaking out, seeking help, or even recognizing the abuse they are experiencing. Furthermore, cults often promote a culture of shame and guilt, encouraging members to confess their sins, shortcomings, and doubts to the group. While confession can be a healthy practice in a supportive and confidential setting, within a cult, it often becomes a tool for manipulation and control. Cults promise community and belonging, appealing to the lost and lonely. They present as havens of love and support, but foster dependence and isolate members from outside relationships, creating a fertile ground for manipulation and abuse. Leaving a cult can be an incredibly challenging and painful experience, often fraught with emotional turmoil, social isolation, and even financial ruin. Cults, by their very nature, are designed to discourage dissent and maintain control over their members, and they often employ various tactics to make leaving as difficult and costly as possible. One of the most significant barriers to leaving a cult is the fear of social isolation. Cults often become the entirety of their members' social world, providing friendships, romantic relationships, and a sense of belonging. Leaving the group often means severing ties with these relationships, leaving former members feeling alone, ostracized, and adrift in a world that no longer seems familiar. Furthermore, cults often instill a deep-seated fear of the outside world, portraying it as dangerous, hostile, and spiritually corrupt. This fear can be paralyzing, preventing members from even considering the possibility of leaving, let alone taking concrete steps to do so. In addition to these emotional and social costs, leaving a cult can also have significant financial implications. Cults often demand significant financial commitments from their members, urging them to tithe generously, contribute to special funds in the name of expanding the movement, or even surrender personal assets to the group. Recognizing high-control groups can be challenging. Look for red flags like a charismatic leader demanding absolute authority, discouraging critical thinking, controlling information, and using fear or guilt to control members. My introduction to the movement, then known as the International Christian Churches, ICC, felt like a warm embrace on a cold night. Having just moved 3,000 miles away from home, I was adrift in a sea of unfamiliar faces, grappling with loneliness and the uncertainties of a new city. The movement, with its vibrant community and promises of purpose and belonging, seemed like the answer to my prayers. I still remember the first time I attended one of their services. The energy in the room was palpable, a contagious mix of joy, enthusiasm, and unwavering conviction. People were genuinely happy to see me, showering me with smiles, hugs, and invitations to social events. I had never experienced such warmth and acceptance before, and I was instantly drawn in. Looking back, I can see how perfectly they catered to my emotional needs at that time. I was young, idealistic, and eager to make a difference in the world. The movement, with its emphasis on discipleship, evangelism, and life transformation, gave me a sense of purpose that went beyond my personal aspirations. I felt like I was part of something bigger than myself, a movement that was changing the world one soul at a time. The First Principles Bible Study series, presented as the foundation of their beliefs, initially seemed like a logical and compelling explanation of the Christian faith. The emphasis on conformity and obedience within the movement gradually eroded my individuality. Deviations, even in music or friends, were met with disapproval and correction. The culture of discipleship felt more like surveillance and control. I felt immense pressure to present a perfect facade, always joyful and zealous. Doubts and struggles were suppressed, seen as spiritual weakness or rebellion. Section 3. Behind the Smiles. Witnessing Hypocrisy and Abuse of Power. As I climbed the ranks of the movement, eventually becoming an evangelist, I gained access to a behind-the-scenes perspective that most members never experience. The facade of love, unity, and spiritual purity began to crumble, revealing a darker underbelly of hypocrisy, control, and abuse of power. I witnessed firsthand how the leadership manipulated information, selectively sharing stories of success while suppressing accounts of doubt, dissent, or those who had left the group and experienced harm. I saw how they used fear and guilt to motivate members, emphasizing the dangers of the outside world and the eternal consequences of questioning their authority. The financial practices of the movement, especially the heavy emphasis on tithing and contributions to special projects, often felt exploitative, with minimal transparency or accountability about how the funds were being used. The leadership lived comfortably, while many rank-and-file members struggled financially, sacrificing their own needs to support the group's ever-growing demands. What troubled me most was the emotional and spiritual manipulation I witnessed. Individuals who dared to express doubts or challenge the leadership were often subjected to public shaming, intense pressure to conform, and even accusations of being possessed by demonic influences. This culture of fear and silencing dissent created an environment where abuse could thrive unchecked. Allowing doubts to seep through. My disillusionment with the movement grew as I witnessed hypocrisy within its leadership. They preached humility and selflessness, but often acted in contradiction to those values. Their manipulation and abuse of power were evident. This hypocrisy stood in stark contrast to the evangelism mission promoted by the three movements. I questioned if we offered love and hope or control and manipulation. The impact on lives was devastating. As my doubts grew, I sought alternative perspectives, craving information to validate my concerns. Venturing outside the bubble of the movement was risky, but my thirst for truth ultimately outweighed my fear. I researched the movement online and discovered websites exposing their harmful practices. Reading testimonies of former members filled me with validation and terror. I reached out to former members, initially hesitant and fearful. Their compassion and understanding created a safe space for me to share my story. Connecting with them was like breathing fresh air after years of confinement. They helped me recognize the three movements' control tactics for what they truly were: manipulation disguised as love. They shared their journeys of healing, offering me hope to reclaim my life. Section 9. The Agony of Awakening. Confronting the Depth of Deception. Awakening to the truth about the movement was excruciating, like ripping off a bandage. Each layer of deception uncovered deeper manipulation and betrayal. The First Principles Bible Study Series, the foundation of my faith, was a tool of indoctrination. Confronting the deception within the movement triggered a wave of anger, shame, and grief. Yet, amidst the pain, there was hope. Recognizing the manipulation and breaking free was a testament to my strength. Introducing the BITE model by Stephen Hassan. The BITE model stands for Behavior, Information, Thought, and Emotional Control. It explains how high control groups manipulate individuals. Behavior control dictates actions and routines. Information control regulates the flow of information. Thought control shapes beliefs and internal dialogue. Emotional control manipulates feelings to create fear and guilt. Section 2. Behavior control. Dictating actions and suppressing individuality. Behavior control is the foundation of a cult's manipulation, dictating members' actions to create conformity and obedience. The three movements excel at behavior control, using strict rules and social pressures to regulate members' lives. Discipleship often becomes a system of surveillance and control. Members' actions, thoughts, and emotions are scrutinized. This scrutiny extends to dating, career choices, and leisure activities. Deviations from the group's standards are met with correction. Individuality is stifled, and personal autonomy is viewed as a threat. Section 3. Information control. Constructing a reality-distorting bubble. Information control is key in cult tactics, shaping perceptions and realities. By controlling information, cults create a reality-distorting bubble, isolating members from alternative viewpoints and critical information. The movements rely on censorship, manipulation, and fear to control information, creating an echo chamber where their narrative dominates. Section 4. Thought control, imprisoning minds and stifling critical thinking. Thought control, perhaps the most insidious aspect of the BITE model, represents the invisible chains that bind individuals to a cult's ideology, shaping their very thoughts, beliefs, and internal dialogue. This manipulation is often subtle and gradual, operating beneath the level of conscious awareness to mold individuals into conformity with the group's worldview, effectively imprisoning their minds and stifling their capacity for critical thinking. Within the movement, thought control is a pervasive and insidious force, utilizing various techniques to suppress doubt, enforce conformity, and instill a deep-seated fear of questioning the group's teachings or authority. The First Principles Bible Study series, while presented as a foundational study of Christian doctrine, functions as a primary tool for shaping the thought patterns of its adherents. It instills specific interpretations of Scripture, a rigid moral code, and an unwavering belief in the exclusivity and spiritual superiority of the movement. One of the most common tactics used by the three movements is thought stopping, a method designed to train members to suppress any thoughts, doubts, or questions that challenge the group's teachings. This suppression is often achieved through repetitive mantras, prayer formulas, or even physical punishments for entertaining forbidden thoughts. Another insidious technique is loaded language, where the three movements co-opt common words and phrases, assigning them specific meanings that reinforce their ideology. Emotional control, the fourth and final pillar of the BITE model, forms the cornerstone of a cult's power, enabling its leaders to manipulate the emotional landscape of its members, creating a climate of fear, guilt, and shame that makes it incredibly difficult to question the group's teachings or even imagine a life outside its confines. By exploiting the fundamental human need for love, belonging, and acceptance, groups like the three movements manufacture devotion, ensuring compliance and silencing any voices that might challenge their authority or expose their harmful practices. One of the most effective tools in the three movements' emotional arsenal is love bombing, a manipulative tactic employed to shower new recruits with affection, attention, and a sense of belonging. This intense outpouring of love and acceptance can be intoxicating, particularly for individuals who are feeling lost, lonely, or searching for a sense of purpose. However, this love is often conditional, contingent upon the recruit's willingness to conform to the group's beliefs and behaviors. As members become more deeply enmeshed in the three movements, the love bombing often gives way to more insidious forms of emotional manipulation. Fear, guilt, and shame become the primary motivators, instilled through a combination of fear-based teachings, public confession, and the constant threat of social isolation or spiritual condemnation. Them mentality, reinforcing the movement as the sole true source of love. Members view the outside world as hostile, becoming increasingly reliant on the group. Section 8. Breaking free from the grip, recognizing and resisting BITE tactics. Breaking free from a high-control group like the movement is daunting, comparable to navigating a shifting labyrinth. The BITE model offers a roadmap for recognizing and resisting manipulation. Recognizing BITE tactics is the first step towards liberation. Educate yourself about behavior, information, thought, and emotional control. Awareness is empowering, allowing critical thinking and authentic living. Resisting these tactics requires courage and resilience. Set boundaries, question authority, and seek outside perspectives. Breaking free often means severing ties with friends and community. This painful separation is necessary for healing. Step outside the echo chamber, breathe freely, and begin recovery. Section 10. Protecting yourself and others. Preventing future exploitation. Healing from cult trauma involves protecting others from similar exploitation. Share stories, raise awareness, and advocate for critical thinking. Educate about high-control groups' red flags. Understand their tactics to avoid risks. Approach absolute claims with skepticism. True spirituality empowers, not enslaves. Engage in open conversations about dangers. Create safe spaces for sharing and support. The psychological and emotional scars left by cult involvement run deep, often lingering long after individuals have physically extricated themselves from the group's grasp. The insidious nature of mind control, with its systematic dismantling of critical thinking, autonomy, and self-worth, can leave individuals feeling broken, lost, and profoundly different from who they were before their involvement. The experience of having one's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors controlled by an external force can be deeply disorienting, shaking the very foundation of one's sense of self and reality. Individuals who have left cults often describe feeling like strangers to themselves, haunted by the echoes of their indoctrination and struggling to reconcile the person they were within the group with the person they are striving to become. The three movements, with their emphasis on absolute obedience, control over information, and emotional manipulation, leave a lasting impact on the psyches of their members, often embedding deep-seated patterns of fear, guilt, and self-doubt that affect every aspect of their lives long after they leave. These invisible scars can manifest in a variety of ways, from difficulty trusting one's own judgment to an inability to form healthy and authentic relationships. Cults steal one's identity, molding individuals into conformity, suppressing their authentic selves. Within the three movements, this identity theft is subtle, disguised as spiritual growth and commitment. Members surrender their ambitions and dreams, believing fulfillment lies in obedience. Rebuilding a sense of self is daunting but essential, like piecing together a shattered mirror. It requires courage to explore true thoughts, rediscover passions, and make value-aligned choices. The betrayal inherent in cult involvement, the realization that one has been deceived, manipulated, and exploited by those they trusted most, can have a profound impact on an individual's ability to trust themselves and others, often leaving them feeling vulnerable, guarded, and hesitant to form close relationships. Within the three movements, this identity theft is subtle, masked as spiritual growth and commitment. Members are taught to view those outside the group as dangerous, untrustworthy, or even spiritually contaminated, creating a climate of fear and suspicion that can extend even to family and friends who do not share their beliefs. This isolation, designed to serve the three movements' goal of maintaining control, can have devastating consequences for individuals, leaving them feeling alone, unsupported, and deeply distrustful of those who might offer genuine love and support. The fear of being hurt, manipulated, or deceived again can become a powerful barrier to intimacy, making it difficult to form healthy and fulfilling relationships. Rebuilding trust after this experience is a gradual and delicate process, requiring patience, self-compassion, and a willingness to be vulnerable despite the risk of being hurt. It involves learning to set healthy boundaries, to communicate one's needs and expectations clearly, and to recognize the red flags of manipulation that may signal a return to unhealthy relationship patterns. Manipulation, fear-based teachings, and public confession foster deep shame and self-doubt. Healing requires challenging these toxic beliefs and reclaiming self-worth. Professional help and support groups are vital in this journey. Practicing self-compassion is key to overcoming shame and guilt. Is the erosion of critical thinking skills. Cults, by their very nature, demand unquestioning obedience, discourage independent thought, and control the flow of information to maintain their grip on their members. This systematic dismantling of critical thinking leaves individuals vulnerable to manipulation, ill-equipped to evaluate information objectively, and often paralyzed by fear and self-doubt when faced with decisions that require independent judgment. Within the three movements, critical thinking is often depicted as dangerous, a slippery slope towards spiritual rebellion and eternal damnation. Members are taught to rely solely on the group's interpretations of Scripture, to dismiss any information that contradicts the movement's teachings as harmful to spiritual integrity, and to suppress any doubts or questions that arise as a sign of weakness or a lack of faith. Relearning how to think critically after this experience is like regaining the use of a muscle that has atrophied from disuse. It requires patience, persistence, and a willingness to challenge deeply ingrained beliefs and assumptions. It involves learning to question everything, to seek out alternative viewpoints, to evaluate evidence objectively, and to trust one's own judgment, even when it conflicts with the teachings of the group. Leaving a high-control group like the three movements often triggers a torrent of emotions, a roller coaster of highs and lows that can be both exhilarating and terrifying. After years of suppressing their true feelings, of denying their doubts, and of conforming to the emotional dictates of the group, former members often find themselves overwhelmed by the intensity and complexity of their own emotional landscape. The initial euphoria of escaping the group's grasp, the sense of freedom and relief, can quickly give way to waves of grief, anger, shame, and even guilt. The realization of the manipulation experienced, the betrayal by trusted leaders, and the loss of a community that once felt like family can trigger a profound sense of loss and disorientation. Navigating this emotional roller coaster requires immense courage, self-compassion, and a willingness to allow oneself to feel the full spectrum of emotions without judgment or self-censorship. It involves learning to identify, express, and regulate one's emotions in healthy and constructive ways, skills that were often discouraged or even punished within the confines of the group. This process of emotional healing often necessitates seeking professional help from a therapist specializing in trauma recovery, creating a safe and supportive space to process the emotional fallout of cult involvement. Connecting with other former members, individuals who understand the unique challenges of this emotional landscape can also provide invaluable support, validation, and a sense of shared experience. Section 7. Finding Your Tribe, the Power of Community in Healing and Growth. Healing from cult involvement is deeply personal but not meant to be traveled alone. Finding one's tribe, connecting with others who understand the unique challenges, is essential. For former members of the movement, this community provides a safe space to share stories and process experiences. Within these circles, individuals can reclaim their voices and rebuild their lives. These communities can be online forums, social media groups, or in-person meetups. Some find comfort in connecting with others who have left the movement, while others expand their social circles to include diverse backgrounds and belief systems. The power of community in healing from cult involvement cannot be overstated. It provides a lifeline of support, a safe haven from isolation and judgment, and a source of inspiration and hope as individuals witness the resilience and courage of the human spirit. Section 8, From Trauma to Triumph. Embracing the journey of post-cult recovery. The journey of healing from cult involvement is not for the faint of heart. It is a challenging, often painful, and deeply personal process, requiring individuals to confront their deepest fears, to challenge their most cherished beliefs, and to rebuild their lives from the ground up. Yet, within this crucible of transformation lies the potential for profound growth, resilience, and a depth of self-awareness that few experiences in life can offer. The scars of manipulation, though they may never fully disappear, can become badges of honor, testaments to the strength and resilience of the human spirit. The experience of having one's mind and heart hijacked by a high-control group can ignite a passion for truth, a commitment to critical thinking, and a deep empathy for others who have been similarly exploited. The journey of post-cult recovery is ultimately a journey of self-discovery, a reclaiming of one's voice, one's values, and one's power. It is a testament to the indomitable spirit that resides within each of us, a spirit capable of not only surviving the darkest of experiences but of emerging from the ashes stronger, wiser, and more compassionate than before. The enduring legacy, confronting the lasting impact of spiritual abuse. Spiritual abuse leaves deep, invisible wounds. The teachings of the three movements, cloaked in love and faith, manipulate and control. This betrayal of trust affects countless lives, eroding both faith and personal trust. Addressing this requires exposing the truth, holding abusers accountable, and promoting a culture of critical thinking and empowerment. Breaking the cycle, a call to action for transparency and accountability. Exposing the manipulative tactics of the three movements is about breaking the cycle of abuse and empowering individuals to make informed spiritual choices. Sharing stories can heal and catalyze change, holding abusers accountable. Support and accurate information are essential for those questioning the three movements. Collective efforts and transparency are key to accountability. Embracing hope,